Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined once again by the big boss himself, the busiest man in Madison, Wisconsin, John McNamara. John, man, do you remember a time like this before?
You know, June is always busy. I don't remember a stretch like this though, when you got a commitment happening just about every day, and that first official visit weekend went so well for Wisconsin. So in terms of having so much to cover in such a short amount of time, it seems pretty unique. But like I said, June is usually a busy month, so you kind of get locked and loaded, ready to go for this month with official visits.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, let's talk commitments. We've had two big offensive line commitments in the last couple of days, and it's Kevin Heywood, it's Ryan Cory, two kids out of Pennsylvania. John, I texted you saying basically the state of Wisconsin and the state of Pennsylvania exchange a trade. Donovan Harburg, Garrett Sexton for Ryan Cory and Kevin Heywood. Penn State, Wisconsin, Penn State. It's really interesting. I can't remember any offensive line recruiting cycle like this. I see Heywood as a tackle. I see Cory as a guard. Do you see the same thing? And where do you think the staff sees these guys?
Yeah, I would agree. Starting with Cory, 6'4", about 290 pounds. And if you watch that film, it's almost exclusively, I should say it's probably exclusively at guard. And I think that's certainly where he projects. And, with two tackles now in Heywood and Derek Jensen, you need interior guys. And, maybe that fourth guy could be someone like a Colin Cooperly who could, probably play tackle, could bump inside if you needed him to. I think Jensen's another guy who could play inside if you needed him to. But, just where they're kind of penciled in now, Jensen and Heywood as two big four-star tackles, and Cory on the inside, probably as a guard. That's an awfully nice start to that. I shouldn't say start, right? I mean, it's an awfully nice kind of midpoint check for that offensive line class at a position where it was, under some criticism, the last handful of weeks, because they did miss out on some guys, but I certainly think they rebounded well, particularly with Heywood, a kid that had an Alabama offer, Georgia offer, was going to go out and see USC for an official visit in June, but obviously wrapped it up and committed to Wisconsin. So I think that's an awfully good get. And Wisconsin's certainly trending in the right direction now on the offensive line with those two in the boat.
Yeah, and since we last talked, John, we also got Hank Weber and Vernon Woodward, which I will tell you, I was not ready for Vernon Woodward. I was not surprised at all by Hank Weber, especially being here in Middle Tennessee and knowing the people that I know. I was shocked by Woodward. I didn't see that coming out of anywhere, John. Like, let's talk a little bit about him. I mean, he's got that prototypical length that all that freaking Hitchler and this entire defensive backfield coaches seem to love. Let's talk a little bit more about Woodward, though.
Yeah, 6'2", 180 pounds, and that's unique at a cornerback position. I got a chance to talk to him. I got a chance to talk to his coach, and I think a lot has been made. I've made a big deal out of, look, Wisconsin's looking to get bigger corners. I don't think that's like a revolutionary idea where Wisconsin's the first staff to say, hey, let's recruit better, not better, let's recruit taller cornerbacks. It's not. It's more difficult to do, and they certainly put an emphasis on that. And, you're getting a guy, who not only can just play corner, but is, talking to his coach said he could play all five spots in the defensive backfield. So, he can play safety. If you watch his film, he likes to come up and hit. So I think he can play a little closer to line of scrimmage if you need to. So a versatile kid. He'll start at safety, but, there's a lot to like there. I'm not surprised that he ended up at Wisconsin, but I'm surprised that it happened this quickly. I thought he was going to take that visit to Illinois, and I think maybe he was going to take one more as well in June. But, he wrapped things up pretty early. And, now at that cornerback position, those spots look pretty coveted. Talking to Xavier Lucas, talking to Heywood, they said that they're only going to take two corners in that class. So there's a lot of guys headed to campus, too, for the rest of the month that are cornerbacks and, who certainly fit what Wisconsin wants. It'll be interesting to see who they pair now with Woodward in this class.
Yeah, well, and Prescott at safety, right? Because, we see those two guys as sort of the two starting pieces there. I see Prescott probably best as a nickel, though. I think personally that's where his skill set fits the most, but you could see him at safety. I don't see Prescott as an outside corner, but I do think Woodward could turn into an outside corner. And the thing that this staff has, they can point to Sauce Gardner, they can point to Kobe Bryant and say, "Hey, we've made it work with long, tall corners like you," right? And that's the proof in the pudding. And that has always been something. Wisconsin's had really good safeties and some good corners, but they haven't had that stud corner in a while.
Yeah, and they communicate that to these kids. You better believe it, because all the corners I talk to, that comes up. Especially when they get on campus for a visit, they said, "Hey, Luke Fickle, he coached Sauce Gardner and Kobe Bryant," and that message obviously is being communicated to them as well.
Yeah, loud and clear, I'm sure. Okay, so let's spin it forward to this coming weekend. We've got another big slate of prospects coming for this June 9th weekend. We offensive line, Ronan O'Connell, but the guy that I think I want to talk with you most about is Cam Richardson. He's a guy that I think is, talking about those coveted spots left in the defensive backfield. I think he's a guy that could fill one of those spots and fill it pretty soon.
Yeah, nothing's guaranteed, but he's a guy I think where certainly would not surprise me if he committed while he was on campus. As of the last time I checked in on him, Wisconsin is still his only official visit. He mentioned Stanford is another school that he potentially wanted to get out to, but he also said, I want to make my decision this summer. So you got Wisconsin, a school that you've been to, that you loved in the spring, and now that's your only official visit. And there's likely one, maybe two spots left at safety. I think that's probably something he jumps on. Again, we'll have to see how everything goes. But with the way that Wisconsin has been operating after the first weekend, he's someone that, I'm starting to prep for in terms of having stories ready next week.
Lloyd Irvin is another guy at the defensive backfield. You want to talk about long? He is long, and I'm excited about Irvin and his teammate Obinna Onwuka, who are both going to be on campus. Onwuka is a guy who we know that they've gotten now Weber at one defensive line position. Onwuka is an interesting guy. I could see him almost as an outside backer hybrid. He could do a lot of different things. I know they made a good impression on Benedict Ume last week. He's a guy you take no matter what and find a spot for, if depending on how many defensive linemen that they take. One other guy, though, that interests me this coming weekend, Raphael Dunn. I don't really know what to do with him, but he's an athlete that you just get in the program and you find out what happens, because he could play safety at 6'5". He could play. They've got two tight ends in the class. He could play a bunch of different places.
Yeah, and when I talked to him after he visited and picked up the offer in the spring, he said Wisconsin likes me at that dollar position. And he was really the first guy that I've talked to that said, like, specifically that's where they like me to play. Other guys, obviously, they recruited me as an outside linebacker. They like me at safety. Maybe I could play corner. But he specifically said, that dollar position, during spring camp, you saw Hunter Wohler play that spot. A little bit of Daryl Peterson, but it sounds like Hunter Wohler is going to be probably that person in that spot where obviously, the skill set that he brings, a guy that, can obviously come up and make tackles, can cover, excellent athlete. So that's kind of where they peg Raphael Dunn. But, if that doesn't work out, safety, I don't know, 6'5" safety. I question that for a high school kid who's going to then go into a college program and eat a bunch and lift a bunch. So maybe it's outside linebacker, but when I touched base with someone, they labeled him as a defensive athlete. So kind of pick where you want to put him there. And I certainly think they'd make room for him in this class just because of that versatility.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about Liam Andrews a little bit last week. The one other guy that I don't know a ton about, but will be there this weekend, is Dominic Kirks, out of Ohio, the defensive lineman. And he's a kid that is he's interesting to me, right? Because he has some pretty solid offers. You look at an Iowa, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, a lot of the usual contenders, Washington, and he's a guy that I think, like, after Onwuka, he's a guy that they might look at as well. So it's just an interesting assortment of defensive linemen, especially that they're bringing in. We haven't seen a true nose yet. We haven't seen like a true nose tackle really emerge. Now, Clint and I have talked about on previous episodes of this that, those true noses, those guys can command a lot of NIL because they are, few and far between. And, they're just harder to find those body types. So my question then to you is, what do you think that the Badgers will do going forward at the nose tackle position?
It seems like they do want to add someone there. The kid that they offered earlier this week, Artavius, his last name's escaping me, down from Florida. He certainly fits that defensive tackle, nose tackle role. So it seems to be something that they're still looking for. But, a lot of the guys that you mentioned, Weber, Kirks, a handful of those guys are these guys in the 6'4", Ume, 6'4", 6'5", 250, 260 range, who they can play outside. They can probably bump inside. So, obviously you like guys who are versatile, but they certainly bring that to the defensive line position. But it's good to have those true tackles as well. It may not be an absolute must-have in this class because you got Jamel Howard in the previous cycle, but it looks like this group does want to add a tackle. Maybe it'll come a little bit later in the process. Maybe it's someone who kind of shoots up the charts during their senior year. I know they've also offered the kid come into the pit. I don't have that name in front of me there. I'm not doing too hard.
Artavius Jones, I think, was the one you were looking. Yeah, Artavius Jones is the one you were looking for earlier. But yeah, it will be interesting to see what they do there. I think Scruggs, like I've said this before, and I'm going to keep hammering this point. I think Scruggs has the makings of being the best recruiter on this staff in a couple of years, like maybe even within a year. That dude's personality is special. Is to steal a word from Bernie, special. The way that he engages with people is unique. And I think that he is someone who is going to be able to, maybe not this cycle, but 2025, I think he could pull some really, really big fish out.
I think that's on the table. I mean, he's brought some exciting kids on campus already. He's going to bring some more exciting kids in June. So I agree with that. There's a lot of guys in the staff who can recruit well. You hear Colin Hitchler's name come up a bunch. A ton. It seems like he's recruiting, a lot. And then, you've seen a lot of Philadelphia kids surface recently, and that's Hitchler's kind of area as well. I think that's where he grew up. So, I don't know if I can say that the top recruiter so far on the staff, but I wouldn't make an argument against Scruggs. I would tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can make, an argument against many of them so far. I think everyone has been, pretty happy with the results. There was, the rumblings and the grumblings about the offensive line. We've all talked about them, but I think those have been put to rest with those two commitments this week. And I personally, of the three offensive linemen that they have right now, I think I love Ryan Cory. Like, I love that kid's game. Like, he's a mauler, man. That kid is someone who is going to be, I think he could be ready to play start second year on campus. I love his game. I love the way he moves at his size. He's someone whose film really, really impresses me. And he's a first team WPIAL. That is one of the toughest leagues in the country. And he's blowing dudes up. I'm a fan.
Yeah, he plays like he's from that conference. Like, you see some hard-nosed West Pennsylvania kids. I mean, he seems like a tough kid. Watching that tape, he plays with some nasty, finishes blocks off. I think he'll fit in real well at Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think he absolutely will. And I think Heywood's athletic upside, I mean, it's huge, right? He's so light on his feet. He's just growing into his body. I think he still looks like a baby giraffe out there at times. He's learning to use, because, I mean, you look at him and he's not like, he's 6'7", 290, but he's not fat, but he's not cut. He's just kind of like body. And the fact that he moves, he's able to move, and you can see all of the components there. He's a little bit more raw, but I think once you put those together, that upside is massive for, just you can see in some of his movements, especially his lower body.
Yeah, he's more left tackle to me in comparison to Jensen, who's more right tackle. So I think 100%. Those guys complement each other very well. Two huge kids. It's funny you said baby giraffe, because that's exactly what the Arrowhead coach told me about Jensen. He's out there just kind of clunking around when he was a sophomore, but like that jump that he took from sophomore to junior, and now the jump that he'll probably take from junior to senior, I think it's going to be significant. So, like we talked about, you really like this tackle class for the Badgers. And a couple of weeks ago, it didn't look look, I'm surprised with Heywood. Things move quickly with him. When we were mocking things up at the start of official visits, he's a kid I fully expected to take those visits. Penn State was still on the table, even though he wasn't going to visit Penn State officially. So for Wisconsin to close him out, we kind of got rumblings going in that, hey, this kid's going to commit. He's going to do something on a boat. So it was kind of planned. But even then, I was like, oh, wow. I mean, that's big time because, look, Alabama, Georgia, those are legit offers. If you scroll through his Twitter page, he's got a picture of Nick Saban with him. So, I mean, those are the best schools in the country. So it's a huge gift for Wisconsin. He's going to look really good for the Badgers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this offensive class is coming together really well. The last piece is going to be, especially if they get Cooperly, to sort of round out that group of 4 offensive linemen. The only missing piece, running back. Darian Dupree was on campus. We know they were pushing him hard. My guy, Dejon Riggs, is coming onto campus here in a couple of weeks. Gideon Atuka will be here this coming week. And that's really going to round out the offensive class. There's not going to be a whole lot of room after that. You make room for an Imarian Stewart, but, that's basically down to Wisconsin and Michigan at this point.
Yeah, and he announced that he's going to commit in 9 days. I don't know when we're dropping this, so sometime soon. I think it lines up right before his Michigan visit. I've always felt it's just too bad we don't have Clint here. He's the king of Chicago. He would know this, but he seems like a Michigan lean, and it's been that way for a while. Obviously, he visited Wisconsin officially, but he's been to Wisconsin 4 or 5 times at least. He's been up there a ton. So if you ask me today, I'd say Michigan for him. It'd be odd, I guess, to commit the day before you were going to go on an official to Michigan and like cancel on him. That seems kind of cruel, maybe. I guess all is fair in love and recruiting, but I don't know. I guess Michigan would be my pick right now, but it's crazy to say that's not a position of need for Wisconsin. They got the highest rated kid on their board. He's not the highest rated kid, in the country right now, in Kyan Barry Johnson, but I can assure you that's who the coaching staff wanted. I don't want to say more than Stewart because it's irrelevant, but like that was their guy and they got their guy. And they have a loaded receiver room right now. And everyone could come back next year. So not a position of need. You take Stewart as a luxury potentially. He'd be an excellent luxury to have there. But not something that's going to, cripple your class if you don't get him.
Luxury receivers. Oh, how the times have changed, John. Oh, how the times have changed. Who would have ever expected that?
Never.
Well, you know what? That's what's great about recruiting, right? We don't know what we're going to get, especially with the new staff. It's so exciting. So speaking of that, you've got to go to jump on another interview. I'm going to go edit this. And we will be back next week with more Badger Blitz TV. So make sure that you are on BadgerBlitz.com all the time, keeping up with the latest news in the den. Follow John on Twitter at McNamara Rivals. Make sure to subscribe to the Badger Blitz YouTube page where you are watching this right now. And until next time, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in the den.